Science says when the brain stops, you stop. Religion says the soul continues. Both sides are honest, and they have had this conversation in various forms for centuries. Most people assume the problem is that one side is simply wrong, but what if contradiction is structural? What if it runs deeper than any of that? Let me suggest something that might sound strange at first. Both sides are half right, and that is precisely why they cannot agree. Religion has the right intuition. Across every tradition, across thousands of years, human beings have sensed that there's more to life than what we can see and measure. That we are more than our bodies. This intuition is not an accident. It is pointing at something real. The problem is that it cannot be demonstrated. So it has to be taken on faith. And faith, when it's all you have, eventually hardens into dogma. You stop asking questions and start defending positions. And you end up with dozens of traditions, each claiming the full truth, each contradicting the other. Science has the right method. We do need to know, not just believe. The demand for evidence for something that holds up to scrutiny is completely legitimate. It comes from the same place as the religious intuition, a genuine desire to understand what is actually truth. But science denies the more than just the body, not because it has proven that more doesn't exist, but because it cannot measure it. So materialism fills the gap. If we cannot detect it with our instruments, it probably isn't there. Here's what a Danish thinker called Martinus observed. The materialist who says, when you die, you cease to exist, is making a claim they cannot fully prove. Just like the religious person who says there's eternal life. So here's the question Martinus asked that almost no one else has asked in the same way. What is the basis of our thinking? Not what do we think, but what do we think with? Every thought you have ever had started somewhere. It started with something you experienced through your senses, something you saw, heard, felt. From there, it moved through your emotional response, through your intelligence, making sense of it, and eventually became a thought, a conclusion, a belief, or a theory. Martinus calls this the thought process from below. This is not a tool we happen to be using and could swap out. It is what our consciousness is currently built on, what we can currently perceive in. And here's what that means. No matter how sophisticated our thinking becomes, no matter how much data we gather or how carefully we reason, our conclusion cannot transcend the physical world they started from. The ceiling is not a failure of effort, it is built into the perceptual basis itself. Science is built entirely on this. So is religion, even when it reaches towards the transcendent. It's doing so with thoughts that begins in sense experience. Both systems are working with the same perceptual range. That is the structural diagnosis. Not that science is wrong, not that religion is misguided, but that both are operating with a range that has a ceiling. A second thought process exists. Martinus calls it the thought process from above. This is intuition, but not in the vague sense of a feeling. This is knowing that arises directly, not derived from sense experiences, not built up step by step. It arrives as a complete picture. You've probably glimpsed this, those moments of sudden clarity that did not come from reasoning, where understanding arrived whole without your constructing it. The scientist who wakes 3 in the morning with the solution to a problem they'd been working on for months. Or the artist who suddenly sees the complete work. Martinus says that these are the first glimpses of the second thought process making itself felt. Martinus himself experienced this fully, what he called his cosmic baptism. And what he did next is what makes him different from most mystics. He did not ask anyone to believe him. He translated what he experienced into logical structure, laid it out step by step so that anyone with their own intelligence engaged could follow the argument and check it against their own experience. So let me give you one example of how he argues. So a quick note for anyone new to this channel or Martinus in general. Martinus created a series of colored symbols, detailed diagrams to make his analysis visible. Each one is a precise map of a specific aspect of his world picture. Symbol 6 shows the structure of the living being. Every living being, Martinus says, is a triune structure, three principles that together make life possible. X1 is the I, like in the I do something and not the I we are seeing with. This is the experiencing subject. It is not the thoughts themselves, not the feelings, not the body, but whatever it is that has all of those feelings, thoughts, and the body, right? There's something that is present when you say, I am. X2 is the creative forces. Consciousness, will, memory, intelligence, everything the I uses to experience and create. X3 is the created, and this is here we find our body. So generally we have X1 with the ability, X2, to create or change something in X3. And this is where Martinus argues for this. He states that if you take one of the three away, there is no living being. Remove the I, and there is no one experiencing. There will just be something, an ability to create and something created, but nothing to use the ability to change things. Then you can remove the ability to create, and then you have an I and something created, but you don't have the ability to actually change the created. You can remove all the created, physical body and so forth, and there will be nothing to change. So if you take one of these away, we don't have a living being anymore. That is not a faith claim. That is a logical argument from structure. You can follow it with your own intelligence. You can ask yourself whether it fits your experience of being a subject, of being the one who is there behind all the changing thoughts and feelings, changing your physical body, doing stuff. We have an I that can do stuff, right? This is what Martinus means when he says spiritual truth must be knowledge, not just a belief. It is something we can check. It is something we can compare to our own experiences and make up our own mind about it. So what Martinus is offering is not a new religion. It's not a scientific theory. It's a third thing. Religion is right that there is more to life than the physical world, but it assesses that more through faith, which means it remains beyond demonstration and eventually beyond discussion. Science is right that we need to know, not just believe. But it has decided that the physical world is the only world worth knowing, which means it has closed the door on the very territory religion was pointing towards. Both religion and science has some truth in them, in their own way. The question is not which sides to be on. The question is whether there is a basis for knowledge that goes beyond the perceptual ceiling that both sides share. Martinus says yes. And that basis is the second thought process, not as an occasional glimpse, but as a stable foundation. His entire world picture is the product of working from that foundation. What that means in practice is this: you do not have to accept it on authority. You do not have to believe Martinus the way you would believe a prophet. You can follow the arguments, you can check them against what you know of life, the way suffering works, the way love works, the way consciousness feels from the inside. You can ask whether the world picture holds together, whether it resolves the contradictions that neither science nor religion has been able to resolve. That is not faith. That is a different kind of knowing, and it's available to anyone whose intelligence is engaged and have the experience to understand it. The contradictions between science and religion are not going to be resolved by science improving its methods or religion updating its theology. The shared perceptual basis is the constraint, and that changes not by argument, by development, as the second thought process gradually becomes more available. But you do not have to wait for that. What you can do now, what this channel is an invitation to do, is follow the arguments that is based on this second thought process that Martinus has made available to us. And you can check whether they hold. Check them against your intelligence, check them against your experience of what life actually is for you. That is not an act of belief, that is an act of knowing in a deeper sense. Martinus spent his life making this possible, not as a doctrine to accept, but a map. And a map only works if you check them against territory yourself, all the way to the end. So thanks for watching. If you find this video valuable, please give it a like. If you have any comments on science, religion, and this third way of doing things, please leave them below and I'll be happy to answer. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.